Hello, my name is Ned Stranger, and you're listening to the Us People podcast with Savia Rocks.
Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of the Us People podcast. I'm your host, Savia Rocks, and today I'm humble enough to have Ned Stranger with me today, who is an experienced copywriter and for creatives, I should say, and also a songwriter himself. Hey Ned, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me here, Savia. It's really sweet of you to invite me.
Oh no, perfect. So Ned has been on a podcast before, so he's naturally warmed up today, so that's brilliant. So I can throw all my questions at him, and he should be on point with everything, right?
Yes, throw anything you like.
No, that's perfect. Ned, I want to ask you, the first question I always ask everyone when they come on the Ask People podcast is, tell me a little bit about where you grew up, because I believe that that's a big part within us of what influences us to be who we are and what we become. So could you tell me a little bit about where you grew up and how it was? Yeah, go for it.
Yes. Yeah, so I grew up in what I believe, according to Wikipedia, is the biggest village in the UK. Yes. So it's a village. It's basically a town. It's called Lancing, and it's outside Brighton. So it's south coast of the UK.
Yeah.
And for the first 18 years of my life, I was living there. It's in the countryside, but close enough to the cities that you don't feel lost in nature. So I feel like I was never really home in any like specific kind of environment. I sort of loved being in towns. Obviously, I loved live music and getting inspired by watching other people play. But then I also loved getting lost in the countryside, trying to write songs. And so for the first 13 years of my life, I was doing a lot of classical music, and my real kind of I guess obsession with songwriting as a creative outlet started when I was about 14, and I got given a guitar, but my granddad basically found the guitar in his attic, and he thought it was my dad's old one. So he gave it to my dad, and my dad just gave it to me. And it's this old classical, really not like a nice guitar, but I still have it, and it's very sentimental. So I spent 5 years of my teenage years still there, just roaming around the countryside, writing songs, listening to Muse, Radiohead, a bit of Metallica, all these random bands, and teaching myself how to songwrite. So yeah,
that sounds really nice. So tell me a little bit about the countryside, because when people are in the city and were born in the city, it's a different type of lifestyle. But when you kind of grew up in the countryside, does that help you with nature and songwriting?
I think one thing that was really good was going on long walks and learning to spend time with your own thoughts. I don't know what it's like if you're... I mean, I've lived in London for, 8 years or about that. And sometimes it's really hard to create that space for yourself to think, because there's constant noise, traffic, air pollution, all these things. Which exactly. But if you're in the countryside, you can just sort of walk for an hour or 2 hours, and I probably didn't appreciate it enough at the time. I was always thinking, I wish I lived in a city, because then I could go play more gigs and stuff. But I think looking back, it's really nice to have that space. I think that's what I would say the most important thing is.
That sounds really nice. So what got you into copyright for creatives?
So I've always loved reading. I as a kid, I was, I've got two older sisters, and we were always brought along to libraries and told to just get whatever we wanted. And I really, loved reading fiction, especially just of everything. I had kind of a wide base of interest at school as well. So I liked, a bit of languages, a bit of maths, a bit of English, but I just loved reading fiction. And so even as I was getting really into songwriting, I realized that the thing that I found most inspiring was the words, working with lyrics, wordplay. And I sort of, most people that do copywriting fall into it by accident. So I'd done various jobs. I'd actually done a couple of law degrees, which is ridiculous, given that I was also trying to be a musician. I did a law undergrad and a master's, and I basically ended up I sort of ended up doing random writing jobs for people, and it was only when I sort of stepped back and thought, what work do I enjoy the most? It's sitting and writing someone's blog for them or working on their website for them, that I realized that this is my like perfect job, you know, working with people to define their identity and then turn that into like sort of something simple written. So that's kind of, I sort of fell into it like a lot of people, and especially for creatives. So I especially loved writing for other musicians or artists or film producers. So that's kind of where the copywriter for creatives comes from.
So here's one that I know a lot of songwriters would love to know. If you can, tell us about the process of what copyright is, because not a lot. Okay, every creative knows, they've heard the term copyright, but not everybody understands what copyright is and how important it is to be able to understand it within the music industry.
Yes. So, I'll have to differentiate between copywriting from a legal sense and copywriting, obviously, from because obviously on a podcast people don't know because they're, you know, they can't see the words. But so as a copywriter, I mainly actually just write business stuff. So it's like if somebody needs somebody to write the content for their webpage, that's the sort of copywriting that I do. However, interestingly, as you ask, because I've got a bit of a legal background, I've also got kind of like a decent understanding of how music copyright works. And basically, copyright in the legal sense is a totally different thing. So it's whenever you create anything, so for example, when you write something or if you create a piece of music, I can see the beautiful keyboard behind you. Just to point that out. I know no one can see it on the podcast, but I get to.
It's huge. To look at it. It's taller than me, actually.
Nice. Yeah, it's really cool. It looks really nice, actually. But so whenever you create anything that's like original, it will be copyright protected. Because you created it. And what that means is that other people can't use it without your permission.
Perfect.
So if I write a song and I put it on Spotify, I have rights in that song, and that is what people call copyright. And the reason it's called copyright is because it's about the right to copy it. So people can't copy it without your permission. It's a lot more complicated than that, but I guess it makes
total sense. I'm glad that you're able to share that with us, because I've never had anyone who's ever had a depth explanation when it comes to copyright. Like everybody tells me about, I don't know if you've ever heard of it, I'm sure you have, Ned, where they say, is it poor man copyright, where they put something in an envelope and they post it back to them, but in but in the court of law, while I was like reading, they said that doesn't always work. It's not a form of how can I say, where to say that it's actually yours, because anybody can open it at any time, any given time.
It's more complicated than that. Like copyright is this really weird concept, and I think we're still understanding exactly how it works. But actually, you own copyright even without doing that. So the really important thing is that if you create something original, that is yours. You own it, and that's the first principle. The thing with the envelope is that you can actually register. You can actually register your copyright interest, and that's a more formal process. And the posting the CD to yourself, which I've done when I first started out.
We've all done it,
We've all done it, absolutely classic. You date stamp it or at the post office or whatever. By doing that, you're basically, it's a form of proof that you came up with it. So when I write a song, unless I release it on a certain date on Spotify, for example, or on YouTube or on SoundCloud, there's no proof that I've written it, and so there's a difference between having the right and being able to prove that you have the right.
No, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes total sense for me, because I was always, when I first started writing, I was always puzzled by the copyright and who owns it, and they say we own it, but then somebody else could grab it, and it was a little bit complicated, and I'm sure that's how people feel when it comes to copyright, because it's my song, but a lot of record labels or publishing, for instance, they do not take unsolicited material, and a lot of people don't understand the term of unsolicited material. So could you explain a little bit about unsolicited material, if that's okay?
Yes, this is a great conversation to have. So, record labels, traditionally and even now, they're the people that can take your music career to a complete another level.
Yeah.
That they have the money and the network, obviously, to transform your success overnight. So, a lot of people who are unsigned artists, so don't have a record label. Yeah. That's what they want. That's their overall goal. And what people will do is, it's interesting. It's one of the industries where people will have a dream and they will just go for it. And that's wonderful. But they'll record some songs, possibly even really roughly. They might do like an iPhone recording, and then they'll decide that it's probably good enough to send to a record label. So when record labels say, please don't send us unsolicited stuff, it's more like, please don't just send us random things that we haven't asked for, because normally a record label will ignore 99% of that stuff and only take recommendations from people they trust.
Yeah.
And that's because it's now possible to create your own music really easily, which is a really wonderful thing. Yeah. But it means that it's difficult for them to deal with the volume. So if that makes sense.
What actually inspires you to do music? So what's your inspiration behind music?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this a lot recently, because I've played in like a band for 10 years and I'm now sort of launching my own solo project, and it's the perfect opportunity to take a step back and be like, why do I do this? What am I actually wanting to get out of this? Yeah. And it's really easy to answer that question with things that relate to success. So, I want to get signed. I would love to headline Glastonbury. I want to get a Grammy, all these like achievements, but actually it's far more important to think, what effect do I want to have on people's lives? How do I want to make the world a better place? Yeah. Because me winning a Grammy isn't helping anyone. It's helping me, maybe, if the success doesn't go to my head.
It's a nice accomplishment, by all means.
I know, I'd definitely take a Grammy, but it's more that I think it's really important to reassess why you're doing it. And for me, I want people to listen to one of my songs and as a result to see the world in a different place. Yes. And I get a kick out of the challenge of trying to write that song. The song that stays with you for years because you keep discovering new things in it, and it makes you feel happy in a time where things are difficult, or it brings out your energy or whatever. Basically that's what I love about writing music. It's almost like a challenge to do that in 3.5 minutes in a song or whatever. Yeah. So and obviously I love listening to music and thinking, I wish I could write that. That's I just love challenges, basically.
You sound like me.
Yeah.
Now let's get onto the education. I've spoken to so many people who have been educated, which has helped them and inspired them to do their music. And I spoke to people who weren't educated. So I always like to talk about people's education and whether or not you feel like it's helped you or hindered you in any way. Can you tell me a little bit about your education? Did you go to uni? Did you go to college? Was you self-taught?
Yeah. So musically, and generally in terms of my sort of writing work as well, I've taught most of it to myself by listening to a lot of music, asking people for advice, writing as much as possible, sharing it to people, playing gigs, all this sort of stuff. I did go to university and do law, and that did help me in some ways. I started to write more in a more structured way. It helped me work out what I was thinking and structure it more simply and concisely. But I'd never actually had a formal music training, so I guess I'm uneducated musically. I did learn the violin and the piano when I was growing up, so that was a bit more of like a specific thing. But from the age of 14 onwards, I've taught myself everything, and I think it's good to do that for a few years, but it's not. I think it's worth exploring a bit on your own and listening to music and taking what you want from it. But then I think it is good to have a bit of training after that, because you can sort of understand what the rules are, and you can almost, it's a little bit like you try the puzzle yourself, and then you get shown the answers, and you're like, oh, okay, that's what that is. You can be like, oh, I didn't do it that way, I did it this way, and that's fine. And I like this rule, I don't like this rule. But you still get to learn things that you might have missed. So you kind of get the best of both worlds. That's what I think would be best. So I'm now starting to train myself properly to write songs.
Do you feel like if you are uneducated in music, that you are more likelier to be more creative compared to if you were educated in university or college, you feel like you're not as creatively open-minded? How do you feel about the concept?
I don't like to generalize, but in this case, I probably would say on balance, I think somebody who, for example, I don't know, does a literature degree or does like a philosophy degree or whatever, something a bit random, any degree, I think if you're learning something that is different to the thing you want to do, then it's going to help your writing. Like I think musicians with a more rounded worldview will write more interesting stuff. I do firmly believe that. That's not to say that you can't learn do a music business degree or a music production degree and, you know, learn a lot of stuff around the edges. You know, it doesn't matter where. I don't think it matters where you get the information from. I think what matters is that you take in a broad range of that information.
No, that makes perfect sense. So I was reading on your bio, and it says that you try to release one song a week. It's either write one song a week or release one song a week. It's kind of like a quick. You wrote this is your words, I believe. It says you say that you release a new song once a week, using this quick turnaround to improve my songwriting and performance craft.
Yeah.
Do you find that writing quick helps you? Or do you feel like you're getting everything you need to say out within a song? Because some people, there's different types of songwriters in the world. There are people who can write a song in 10 minutes. And they've made hits after hits, writing those songs after 10 minutes. And then you have people who are, I call them draft writers, where they'll write, then they'll stop, then they'll write, and then stop. And then you have people who are idea writers, who will write down ideas and then write. Where do you feel that you fit in that bracket? Knowing that, I think it's amazing that you write a song a week and you are able to release a song a week. How does that work for you?
Yeah, so these are all great questions. I think I probably have always fitted into the drafting category, where I write a bit, leave it for a bit, come back to it, and then after a couple of years, the song, because, you know, normally to release a song, it would involve me going to the studio with the band or on my own and recording it with a producer. But now what I'm doing is I'm putting up songs a few days after I've started writing them on YouTube, just playing them acoustically. And I don't think it's the best version of that song. So I think what would improve the song is to go away and really, you know, you just have to do as many edits as possible. I have to go through the lyrics 6 or 7 times until I'm really happy with them. Same with the melody, same with the guitar part. But what it does do is force me to come up with more ideas in the first place. So I'm almost becoming more of an ideas person now, and then bringing in the sort of drafting mentality. And that's what I think is helping. So I think it is improving my skills, but only if I release it once and then I keep working on it. It has to be a constant thing.
It's really like an eye opener, because, like I said, so many people work in so many different ways, and it's really nice and refreshing to be able to write a song a week. Like I say, and even if you write one song a month, it's still refreshing, because some people will take years to write songs. Another thing I was reading about you, which I found quite beautiful, was, and I think everyone should have a look at this. If you guys ever have a chance, go and have a look at Ned's website. The reason why I say this is because your morals for life are quite beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. And I feel like, especially with everything that's happening around us, a lot of people have lost those morals and beauty within even the things they see. You have five values. I'll go through a few of them, if that's okay.
No, please, yeah.
First and foremost, I have the value of openness. Yeah. Actually, I'm gonna let you say what you feel about openness, and then I'll move on to the next one.
So I think This is something that I'm especially thinking about at the moment, sharing work really early on. I believe that the world gives you opportunities and interesting and nice things happen if you're willing to share yourself with the world. I think it's basically never a good idea to hide your true nature. And so whenever I meet anyone, I treat them in the same way. I'm as open about things as I would be with a close friend, just because I like to get to know people quicker. I think it speeds up the process of discovering cool people and nice things if you are open. So that's really where that's the first thing I put in.
Another one that I saw, I won't go through all 5, but I go through 2 or 3, but empathy. That's one of the things I feel that us as humans are slowly starting to lack.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit how you feel about empathy.
Yeah, I think for me it's the ability to think and the desire to think, what is that person feeling at the moment? You know, I really want to live my life in a way that the people around me, the people over whom I have any impact at all, feel happier because of my being around. And that's why if I have a choice between getting something for myself, but it will involve someone else suffering unnecessarily or whatever, I'd rather not. I wouldn't live with myself with that. So that's why I think it's really important. And I think thinking more deeply about what will make other people happy can make us happier as well. You can find common ground basically. And I totally agree with you at the moment. I think people are, the world is so full of people trying to sell you, I don't know, success or desire, and people still have this life goal to become rich and all this stuff. And I just think you leave behind that need to look after other people. And so I can see why. Yeah.
The other value you have, if I'm correct, is it curiosity?
That is correct. I've always just loved learning new things, whether it, like I think I said, languages as an example. I'm teaching myself Russian at the moment, which is a very tough language. Beautiful language, and I love it. But it's difficult, but very slowly as well. I can't. Don't ask me to speak Russian. No,
I wasn't going to ask. I know that some people, what they do, because they say when you're sleeping, your brain is actually still awake, is to listen while you're sleeping, and that's another form or way of actually learning how to learn a language, which I think that's how I learned French actually.
Oh, so you speak French? That's nice.
Yeah, well, I had to. I didn't have a choice. I didn't have a choice. My mother speaks fluent French, and she also speaks Indian. She understands Indian as well. So I'm half Indian and St. Lucian, and also Jamaican. So I'm a complete messed up mix in the world. That's why my big hair represents me. I'm lucky enough to be able to see how your lovely hairstyle. People on the podcast don't get to, but thank you, Han. So curiosity is definitely something that I feel that people step away from. I think because of fear, more than anything else. I said I was only going to go through 3, but I love all of them, so I might as well finish the other 2. The other one that everyone should have, and that's been brought to everybody's attention, is gratitude.
Yes, 100%. I think there's a really fine line between appreciating the good things that happen to you and being grateful for them. Yeah. And I feel super grateful. I've got really nice people around me. I've been really lucky to, grow up with nice people and really supportive family, for example. And but it is easy to almost take that too far and to feel guilty about it. And I think it's better to almost combine the gratitude with the empathy. So to think, I'm really lucky, I need to make sure I can make other people's lives better. I think that's really important. Yeah. But I totally agree.
I think that coincides with the last one, which is self-awareness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's one way of framing the self-awareness is that I love talking about myself. so I have to be aware of myself too. No, but I think it's good to step outside your own little bubble and almost objectively look at yourself and be like, who am I at the moment? Am I happy with who I am? Can I, make things better? So yeah.
Oh, that's perfect. I love asking writers this one question. Does writing energize you or does it exhaust you?
Oh, that's a wonderful question. Oh, I definitely say it energizes me. So it is a draining process mentally, but I still step out of, for example, writing an article or writing some lyrics or writing work copy as well. I definitely step out of it feeling totally pumped. It's almost like going for a run. It's that feeling.
What do you feel are the common traps for aspiring writers?
I think it's very easy to almost panic a bit and try to write for as many people as possible. And I think at the beginning it's good. It's good to get a broad experience and to write for different types of businesses and people and try things out. But I think it's worth focusing on who your specific audience are for your writing. So that's why I focus on creatives, especially individuals who, want a bit of help, working on their identity and the writing around that. I've realized that that's where I've got the most usefulness because I've got my own perspective on being a creative as a writer and a singer. So it's interesting. I'd say that's probably one of the I can't remember what word you used to describe, like pitfalls, traps. That's one of the things that's easy to do is to try to be too broad. Other than that as well, like not reading widely enough, read a bit of everything, read some old literature, read some, self-help books, whatever it is, science, all this stuff, all helps.
I agree with you there. Do you feel like the industry gives people a fair chance? So do you feel like you as a writer, do you feel like you get a fair chance in the industry? The only reason why I say this is because a lot of the time it's about who you know. A lot of the time it's about how much money you have. And sometimes I can feel that is slightly unfair because there are people with exceptional talent, but they just don't have the direction or they feel a little bit lost and they don't know how to get into the field. And I think that's one of the reasons why I do this podcast, is to help people understand that you can get into what you want to get into. It's just about having knowledge, and it's not money is power, it's wisdom is power. But I feel like a lot of people possibly, I don't know if you agree, have lost that understanding of it. But how do you feel about the fact of, do you think the industry is fair about giving people a chance?
It's amazing. All your questions are so on point. Like it's almost like you've gone into my mind over the last 2 weeks and you're like reading my thoughts and ask. No, honestly, I've been thinking about all these things. So I think I've always overthought the importance of connections and money and all that stuff in music. And I've always thought, that's what's holding me back. But actually, I'm coming to the realization that I just need to work a lot harder, improve a lot quicker, meet more people, and like I've always been relatively hardworking. I like studying and reading and all this stuff, but I just think there's another level that I need to hit before I can start feeling sorry for myself that I don't know somebody in the record. No, but it is true. And I think especially in music, there's this mentality that, there's the music industry and then there's everyone else and, there's gatekeepers. It's not fair. I don't think that's true at all. I think anyone has got an opportunity to showcase themselves, and it's about how hard you work and about how good your songs are and about how much you're willing to not give up. And I think that's the message I would give people, including myself now and 10 years ago, is to just, keep improving, keep writing and never give up. And I think the music industry is very open in that sense.
Yeah. When did you get your first break within the music industry, regardless of how big or small it was? What was your first break and how did it make you feel?
That's a really nice question, actually. I'd say right from the moment I moved to London, and everything that I didn't have felt like a massive step. So getting played on the radio, getting featured in a blog, any blog, playing a gig in a real venue in London, all these things. And so I couldn't pick one specific break. The one that I'd always think about that was the single biggest step was getting Spotify playlisted. But even that it's good. You get a lot of new listeners and there are still people that discovered our music through that I talk to. And, I've made friends through that, which is really lovely. But I'd say that made me feel like anything was possible in music. It was the big thing that an unsigned artist get onto a Spotify playlist, that's amazing. You know, as it stands, there's a lot of great unsigned music on Spotify playlists now. It just makes you realize that every level you hit, there's just way more levels. You know, you're never going to reach the end. You know, and that's nice. You know, that's why we do it. It's exciting.
No, that's perfect. I like that. Here's a question for you. Do you feel like egos help you or hinder you as a creative person?
Oh, that is an excellent question. I think you need a certain amount of self-confidence to be able to capture yourself in an art form and put that out to people. And you need to not worry that people are going to hate it. And so if it's ego that supports that, so if it's ego that's like, whatever people throw at me, I will use it to get stronger, then I think it's good. If it's ego like a really fragile ego, then I think it's really, really unhelpful, because you need to be able to take criticism in art. So I think it's a really cop-out answer, but I think it depends on the ego. That's not what you want to hear. You just pick one.
No, that's totally okay. As long as it comes from you, it's totally fine. So this is another one I love to ask writers as well. So do you try to be more original when you're delivering content, or do you write for yourself where you feel comfortable?
Yeah, it's almost like, am I a risk taker when I'm writing? Yeah, I think I've always been a little bit too comfortable especially in songwriting. You know, I mean, I don't even know what it would look like to take a risk in my music. I almost feel like I'll always sort of fall back on what makes sense, and if it makes too much sense, then it is risk taking. So I'm probably not enough of a risk taker. And it'd be interesting I think one of the best things you can do as an artist is to force yourself out of your comfort zone. So, you know, for me, for example, you know, if I tried to write hip hop, it would be awful, but it would at least be pushing me to something I'm not used to doing, because I write acoustic indie folk. You know, that I'm sure that will happen one day and everyone will laugh at me. But
Who is the most inspiring friend that you have, and how have they helped you?
I've had so many wonderful friends that I've been so lucky with the people I know. I mean, so at the moment, my girlfriend is just an incredibly talented artist, and she paints beautiful oil paintings, and I'm lucky enough to have her effectively being my creative director. So she helps me with all my sort of visuals, and she's also just generally really inspiring on, you know, the process, my creative process, and she basically is my advisor on everything that I do. And so at the moment, especially, she's wonderful. Her name's Anya, and she's a wonderful artist. You should get her on as well, actually. And then
that's good,
also I've been lucky enough to be in a band with my best friend for like 10 years. And his name's Vedantha, and I met him at university, and again, he's just got the most wonderful creative mind, and you know, some of the lyrics he comes up with, I don't even understand how he's thought of them. He's always been a real inspiration to me, which is nice. If you work with the person who inspires you, it's pretty great.
Of course it is. No, that's perfect. If you could tell your younger self anything, what would you tell yourself, and why?
Great question. I know the answers to this straight away. Enjoy the journey of everything a lot more. You just appreciate the moments all the time. Don't think about the end. Think about the journey. And that doesn't just go for enjoying it. That also goes for, how can I make this better? You know, it's all very well to get your song on a playlist. How can you write a better song? You know, but also, how are you feeling? How is it good? Appreciate that too. So it's a really good question.
I like that one. What is the best money you've ever spent on an album?
The best, as in like the best investment in an album, I guess. Like, that's a tough one, actually. It's a while since I've bought like a physical album, because I move around quite a lot, so I just don't bring a CD collection or a record collection. I think one of my favorite albums is Bon Iver's second album. So it's just incredible, and I think that's probably the best. You know, in terms of the amount I've taken out of that one record for what I spent on it, that's probably been the best investment. Don't know how much it costs, but that's pretty incredible.
So okay, because I'm doing actually what I'm doing is I'm doing a Us People podcast playlist, and everyone who I've interviewed is going to get a message from me to pick their favorite song, and I'm going to put that song in a playlist and then send it out to everyone. Yeah, that'd be pretty cool, because it's nice to hear other people's opinions on things, what inspires people, and it's really, really nice. So yeah, sounds cool. So that song will definitely be in there. So,
perfect. I mean, if it's song, that's different, because I'll get
two songs.
I'll have to think. Yeah, I'll think about a song as well. But
okay.
Time.
What was the earliest experience where you learned that language had power within music?
Ooh, tough. Very tough. The thing is, actually, growing up, I was definitely far more in tune with when I listened to other people's music, I was far more in tune with the music itself and not so much the lyrics.
Yeah.
And it was more where I sort of started reading and understanding. I would say that there's a band called Villagers, and it's actually a guy from Ireland. He's just a wonderful songwriter. And I think I got really, really into, how deep and interesting your lyrics can be, and how much of a story you can tell through them, when I started reading and listening to his stuff more closely. So I'd say that would have been like, I was probably around 19, 20 when I really started getting closer into really zooming in on lyrics. And, I just realized that it was writing lyrics was the crossroads of music and writing for me. So I'd say probably then, which is very late in the day. I was too busy messing around with guitars, the actual guitar.
No. You were grooming yourself to become better. Yeah, exactly, that's how I see it. What is, from your point of view, what is the best way to market yourself as a writer?
This will come back to my whole value of openness. I think you need to find who you are most comfortable as in yourself, and think what sort of people will want you to write for them, and then talk to those people directly. So I think it's very easy to sort of sit down and think, what's my niche? What industry or what topics do I like writing about? Where have I worked? I'm experienced in music, so I should do music. I think it's better to think, who am I? And that's why I've written out my values. Like, so much has improved in my head when I sat down and did that, because I can now think, who shares these values, and I want to write for them. I want to help them tell their story. So I'd say that would be a good first step in doing that. I think that would be the first advice I would give in marketing yourself, is to really understand who you are. After that, it's just keep it simple. What makes what can you give people of value, and why is that special? And try to capture that in as few words as possible. So for me, just to give you a bit of an insight into this, I was thinking, what is really, like, how can I be useful to somebody if they're trying to, convey their business or their work to someone as a creative. And I thought, well, what I've been doing for years is writing songs. And what is a song? For me, it's getting into someone's mind and being able to write their emotions in a song.
Yeah.
Something that they can listen to and be like, this really makes sense to me. So I thought, that's the skill that I want to translate into writing. And therefore, what I can give you is the years of experience as a songwriter. I can get into your customer's head and tell them a story that relates to them.
Yeah.
And that's what will help your business. And so that's I try to basically present that on my writing website, which I don't know if you've seen. But it's that in as few words as possible. That's how I market myself, if that makes sense.
No, it does make sense. It makes total sense. And it's quite, like I say, refreshing to know that. Because I know everybody expects for you to market yourself. You're spending loads of money and you're doing, that's how people view marketing. People view marketing as this big price that you have to pay to market yourself. And it's not necessarily like that all the time.
I think it's far better to tell a really interesting, compelling story to 10 people than it is to shout at 100 or 1,000 people. And I'm only starting to learn that now after years and years of doing this stuff. It's fascinating, but it's such a big point.
Here's another question that will coincide with that one, actually, is how do you handle criticism?
I've actually written an article about this on my website. So I think what I've realized is that it's easy to go to people and ask for feedback and get criticism, but actually sometimes it's the wrong feedback from the wrong person, or it's somebody you want feedback from, but you want it about something else. So for example, if I go to a friend who's really, really good at writing and I ask him for advice on a song and he comes back with the guitar's not very well recorded, I might turn around and be like, I was actually hoping you'd tell me about the lyrics. so that's a really obvious example. But firstly, I would think, who do I want to get feedback on what specifically? And secondly, I think you need to listen to everything and not necessarily do everything, but definitely take it in and filter it a little bit, and don't reject something because it doesn't confirm what you already believe. So if you go into a feedback conversation and someone criticizes you and you don't like it because it goes against what you'd already decided, then you shouldn't be getting feedback or criticism at all. It's just not going to help you. You have to be really open-minded, and if somebody turned around to me and said, I think this song shouldn't have any lyrics, I have to be able to say, maybe you're right, maybe it shouldn't, even if I'm convinced that it should.
Constructive criticism.
Exactly.
No, that's perfect. Tell me the process, because I believe that this would help a lot of people to understand music and songwriting. Tell me a little bit about the process from the beginning, from when you have an idea of writing to the process of when you actually release the song.
Yes. So the moment, the order that it normally happens in now, and I'm tracking this really closely because I've started creating YouTube vlogs about how I write songs, and it's really interesting to sort of look at the process a bit. So what I do first is I have a list of titles, and I think I would love to write a song with this title. So that's almost in my mind already. I'll sit down at the piano or a guitar or some instrument, and I'll just start mucking around with that and singing along, and occasionally something will kind of shine through. Like I'll be like, I'll be like, oh, that's a great melody. And sometimes I'll have that. I know that particular melody isn't great, but bear with me. And then I'll have some words in my head as well. So I might sing a melody with some lyrics, and that becomes like the seed from which the song grows. Yeah. So I then think, okay, I need to just keep playing on that, and I might write out more lyrics. I'll be like, okay, what is this song about? I've got one sentence. What does this mean? Okay, it's about this theme. Let me write down loads of other phrases that work. And then I start to sort of shape them into lyrics and verses and choruses. And I eventually, like, I'll have like a whole song, but it will then need loads of editing. So I'll then sit there and, keep working on the lyrics. Any bits of melody that I don't like, I'll change. And it's basically a process of that until eventually I might record like a demo version of it. So I'll either send it to my producer and he'll change it and add loads of cool effects, and then we'll go to the studio and record it properly. Yeah. Or I might just throw it on YouTube, which is what I'm doing at the moment, and getting people's feedback. So it's interesting. It depends on how I'm releasing the song, and it's evolving even now, which is interesting.
What's the most difficult part about the writing process, would you say? Ooh.
It's a great question as well. I think it's having an idea for the lyrics, but needing it to be really clear. And this is the thing I'm working on most at the moment, is how can I make the song about something? I want to make it about a defined thing. Even if the defined thing is painted in quite a broad way, I don't want the song to be about, I don't want the song to be about adventure. I want the song to be about the feeling you get when you make your first step of a journey, and that's adventure. It's how to make all the lyrics pull in the same direction in that. I think that's the hardest thing I'm finding at the moment.
If you could work with one artist in the world, which artist would you choose to work with, and why would you choose that particular artist? Oh,
that is such a good question, and it's a tough one actually, because I feel like it would be amazing to work with somebody in a totally different genre and try to, try to songwrite with Billie Eilish or something, somewhere that'd be really cool. And to be seeing how that dynamic, because I'm pretty sure we're quite different people, how that, and sure she's a wonderful person and stuff, but like, I imagine we just see things a bit differently. It'd be really interesting to see what comes out of that.
Yeah.
I'd say in terms of songwriting, I mean, I'd love to sit down in a room with Bon Iver and try to see what he did to my idea. To be like, I want to write a song about this. Yeah. How would you say that? And then see how he kind of turns into these like really interesting phrases that I don't understand. That's a little bit like what my band is at the moment, because he's quite like that. So maybe, those are the first two people that come to mind.
Yeah. Oh, that's perfect. If there was one quote that you could choose to represent you as a person, what quote would you choose, and why would you choose that particular quote?
My favourite quote when I was growing up was, when the power of love overcomes the love of power, the world will know peace.
Ooh.
Which is Jimi Hendrix.
That's nice.
I believe. Yeah. But actually, so that was always my favourite quote growing up, but I don't think that's the one that really captures me the most. At the moment, the quote that I'm absolutely loving is, it's a Proust quote, and it's something along the lines of, the journey to discovery begins not with new horizons, but with new eyes.
Yeah, that's true.
I can't remember the exact wording, but it's something along those lines, and I think that's really beautiful. And it's like, you can sit there all you like and try to change the world around you, but it begins here. Yeah. I think that's where I feel at the moment. Yeah. Ask me in a year, but I might change my mind. But yeah.
I'll ask you when I do the interview with you in the band and see what you say.
Yeah, exactly.
If you had an unlimited amount of money, so you have infinity money, what would you change about the music industry, and why would you change that particular thing?
That's tough. I think I would want to make. I'd want to make people really fall in love with seeing musicians perform again somehow. So I don't know if that would be to make it easy for any artist to come up with the most incredible live experience. It would almost be like a fund where anyone could apply and be like, this is how I want to put on a concert. I need the budget for it. And I'd be like, have my money, because I have unlimited money. That's the first thing that springs to mind, because I also, I don't think musicians get paid enough for streaming. And that's so true. I would just, for every stream, I just throw in a couple of like quid as well. I think it'd be more interesting to kind of reimagine live music, because I think, live music is still such a big thing, but I feel like it's becoming quite one-dimensional in a way. We could invest in artists being able to do their own version and tell a story in their own way, and I think that would be amazing.
If there was one memory that you could tell me about that's been your best memory this far, what memory would you choose?
I love thinking about this concept of points in time, like moments in time. And it's actually, so I released a single in early April, and it was about the idea of being able to bottle an atmosphere at a particular moment. And for me, the idea I always come back to, and always have done, is a moment on tour with my band where we were in Rome. And it was the last night of a 3-gig tour. It was the first time we ever went abroad. And we got invited along by a couple of different venues by coincidence. And we weren't really expecting anything from it. We just decided to go along to Italy and see what it was like. And I don't think we barely broke even on the tour. So we were sort of, just about struggling to make any money. We were selling CDs. We were surprised by the number of people buying CDs. That was one thing that was amazing. But there was this moment on the 3rd gig in Rome where I remember just being on stage and having this feeling of utter it was one of those moments that I did appreciate at the time. That, I said earlier, my advice to myself is to really appreciate these moments. Is that we had a whole room of people there that had never seen us before. They were all so kind of engaged, and people's eyes just they were clearly enjoying the music, and it was a whole new audience for us in Italy. And I just remember this one moment where we were singing. I think we were doing an acoustic cover to end our set. Like they wanted an encore, and we got in the crowd to sing along to us.
Yeah.
And it was just like that feeling of being on stage with my friends, with these new friends. And I don't know, that's the one I always think about, and the exact moment that spiked.
Yeah.
That's the one I would think about. I mean, there are so many moments. I'm a very nostalgic person.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. That's what makes your personality and makes you. Yes.
Yes.
I remember in the beginning of the podcast when we were talking about you touched based on success. So my question for you is, define what success means to you, because everybody has a different definition.
Wonderful question. I think if you asked me 5 years ago, I would have tried really hard to come up with an answer that involved some kind of measurable achievement. And I would have said, like I said earlier, it would be like winning a Grammy. Actually for me, it was always, if I can play at Glastonbury, get nominated for a Mercury Prize and play on Jules Holland, those would be like life sorted. But actually, like, I think it's a way of knowing that my music has reached lots of people and made their lives better. I think if I could have proof that my music had made people's lives better, that would be success. And it would, I know that I already have people who've been kind enough to share with me the impact our music as a band has had on them, and they've said, "Oh, you've really helped me through some difficult times. I still listen to your music and your old music, and it makes me feel." Peaceful or happy or excited or whatever. That means so much to me, and it would be that, but just for a lot more people, because I'm a bit of a narcissist and I want everyone to know who I am. But genuinely, that is it. It's thinking more about the people and your effect on them rather than about your own success in the sense of like achievement. Yeah. I think that's what I think.
Was there ever a time, Ned, where you felt like you wanted to give up? It could be like you were saying with the band, where you had lack of funds, lack of support, you felt down, you felt like you were going in a place that you couldn't come out from. What helped you come back up to the point where you are now?
So a combination of things, actually. I did have this sort of moment about a year and a half ago. And it wasn't that I wanted to sack everything in and do something completely different, but I was almost falling out of love with music and starting to focus more on wanting to be a fiction writer as like my artistic pursuit. And I still have ambitions of one day writing a novel. I'd love to do that. That would be amazing. That's a whole other answer. But
you can still do that.
I just love to have an idea and some discipline and be good enough to write it. But that's a long way away. But with the music stuff, I stopped. I think what I realized is that firstly, I have a real need to not only have an impact on people, but to see that impact and to engage. There needs to be a bit of, two-way dialogue there. And because we went through a bit of a phase of not putting out any music in the band, I realized that it's a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy, because you're not writing any music and you're not getting the energy back from people. And so you're not inspired to write more music. So it's very easy to just fall into a bit of a pit. And what helped me out of that was just firstly, my girlfriend was incredibly supportive and just pushed me to write more and to start putting music out, which was really, really kind of her. But also it was starting to just play more again, listen to more music again, remind myself what I love about music, meeting people who are as enthusiastic about music as I was when I first started, and just bouncing off their energy, and then gradually starting to, this is really why I started a solo project, is because I have more music in me than I can do through the band. The other guys in the band are really busy. So a combination of just writing more, support from the people around me, and eventually it kind of picked up again, and I'm more enthusiastic about it now than I've ever been, and I'm writing more than I have done in years.
Yeah.
And it's really a combination of those things.
Oh. If you were stuck on a desert island, okay, here's one for you. Okay, I'm gonna put you on a desert island, a beautiful desert island, and you're gonna be stuck there for a while. What one artist or band would you take with you on that island? You're only allowed one band or one artist.
Oh,
Someone who you would most probably connect with.
oh man, that's tough. I'd say you need a balance of like fun, resourceful.
Ooh.
I'm very practical. Like obviously I want to have a nice time and have a laugh, but also how are we going to find food? How are we going to get off that island? That's a really tough one. I wouldn't take the guys from Radiohead. I know that now, so I can take them off the list. No, I'm sure they're lovely guys, actually. I'm only joking. If they listen to this, I'm really sorry, guys. Sorry, Tom. Maybe I've always thought the two guys in Kings of Convenience seem super chill. They'd be quite fun just to jam 3-part guitar harmonies. It'd be really interesting on a desert island. Yeah.
It'd be quite beautiful, actually, while you're playing a song while the sun goes down.
Yeah, that'd be really nice to get a bit of... somebody I could also just listen to and let them accompany my watching the sun go down. That's true.
Someone that you don't want to chuck in the sea would be perfect.
I think basically somebody who's like a real laugh and is really nice, and I don't know. I need to think about that a lot more. That's such a tough question.
I'm gonna come back to you, and then when I do the write up on your podcast, I'm gonna put Ned said this about this question.
You can use that as the sort of the pull quote. I'll think. Yeah.
What inspires you to stay in the industry now that you're in it?
I don't think it's ever been easier to reach a lot of people with your work. And the music industry especially is built in a way that you can quickly grow to a large audience. And I think if I want to have an impact on people, it's a good way to try a lot of things. If people don't like a song, it's okay. You can just write another song. And obviously it's not that, it's not throwaway, like, whatever, but it's I feel like it's a good balance of trying things out, but meaningful stuff that then people can really appreciate. I also have high hopes for the future, and I think that it's going to become more and more democratic as an industry. I think artists hopefully will get paid better for streaming. There'll also be the playing field is constantly being leveled. And I used to think, that's so annoying. I'm really good. I could be doing really well, but everyone else gets a chance. Obviously, that's ridiculous, and I have so much to learn. And that's what I'm realizing holds me back. So I think again, like the fact that it's going to become more democratic and more of a level playing field, and anyone can reach out and try and achieve what they want. That's what makes me want to stay working in music.
What advice would you give people now I always say this to everyone and then they start laughing. I say, what advice would you give people who are your fans or your followers? Because everyone says, I ain't got fans, I ain't got followers, but we all do. We all do, even if they're undercover.
Yeah.
What advice would you give them about being positive within the music business and just giving them that support to say that they're not alone? Even if you don't know them, it's just about you saying that you're not alone. What advice would you give them?
I think people need to not be afraid to lean on other people for help.
Yeah, I like
that.
And
so, I think that's a really big point. And I want people to know that I'm an open person as an artist. That's like my main thing now. When I think about Instagram and Facebook and YouTube, all these things I'm doing, I really want people to know that not only do I project this idea of openness, but I really am open in the sense that people can message me and I will have a conversation with them. And I'm not like behind this glass thing where I'm an artist and other people are just fans. I love the conversation with a fan. I was speaking to someone a couple of weeks ago who's been listening to August and After. So August and After is the name of my band. I don't think I've actually mentioned the name this whole time. So she's been listening to our music for years. And she's like a real fan. Like she really loves all the songs. She kind of like was asking me questions about them. Yeah. And the fact that we were even having this conversation, because she'd messaged me, we started talking on Instagram, and she'd asked me some questions, and I was like, why don't we just have a chat about it on Skype or something? And the fact that we were having this chat she was so like, she was so grateful, but I was like, no, this is nice for me. Like, I'm really enjoying talking about the music with somebody who actually listens to it and is willing to take the time to talk to me about it. So I'd say don't be afraid to just start the conversation. And that's not just me, that's anyone, you know, anyone that you want to have a connection with, just ask, you know, be willing. The worst case scenario is that they turn out to be a horrible person and ignore you. And, you know, just find someone better.
There's always someone better. I find like when I'm sending out emails for podcasting, even how I found yourself, and it was beautiful because you got back to me so quickly and you were so nice as well. Whereas as sometimes I have to send 20 messages to get one, and that's fine.
It's amazing because, again, this comes back to the whole gratitude thing. It really... I'm honestly so touched that somebody would want to give up an hour of their time to talk to me, because I love talking about this stuff. And honestly, it's a real honor to be asked as well. But even if it wasn't, I really don't like, even when I get quite clearly automated messages on Instagram, like, check out my new single, I still kind of feel that I should check it out, or at least write back to them being like, oh, thanks, Jason. I don't know what it is, but I just have this thing now where I'm like, I can't ignore people. And if I do ever ignore people, it's totally by accident, and I feel totally awful about it. And then weeks later when I'm scrolling through and I'm like, oh no, I didn't reply to that, it's so bad. I really feel like people, it's a respect thing, you know? If people give you the time, you should respect them and respect them for reaching out. So thank you for having me. It's such an honor.
It's perfect. Thank you so much for coming on the show. And finally, my last question, where I say to my guest, plug away, is how do we find you? Yes.
So at the moment, I think the most interesting place for you to find me is on YouTube. So if you type in Ned Stranger, there's a whole load of stuff there. I'm putting out a new song every week on there. I've got vlogs coming out as well where I talk about the writing process, how I'm dealing emotionally, because I like being open about the emotional journey as well. And I'd say find me on YouTube, but also I'm on Instagram, Ned_Stranger. You can chat to me there, and I've got lots of fun, ridiculous stories going up all the time about what I'm up to. And just generally, nedstranger.com is obviously the website. That's where I put everything as well. So any of those places are great. And please send me a message and say hi, and I'd love to talk to you more. So
Ned, I want to thank you so much for coming on the Ask People podcast today.
Thank you, Savia. It's really, really lovely to be here and to talk to you. You have some wonderful questions, and you're quite clearly a delightful person.
Oh,
and,
thank you.
Well, hopefully we'll be able to properly do this in person at some point. And,
most definitely. That's perfect. Guys, thank you so much for listening. And please remember, you can subscribe to the Ask People podcast on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, and any other platform that you prefer listening to. Please also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And please remember, you can donate to the Ask People podcast or on the Savia Rocks website by simply just typing in paypal.me/Ask People podcast, so we can continue to interview beautiful people like Ned. I thank you so much, and stay happy, stay positive, and as always, be kind to one another.